Welcome. Um, as you step into your day, I just want to explicitly offer a divine blessing for you and for the week ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
May you find clarity, purpose, and peace in whatever you are, stepping into right now.
Because you're definitely going to need a bit of that peace today.
You really are. Because, well, today we are diving into a text that looks like this gritty, victorious war epic
Well,
on the surface. But it's actually a psychological map.
right, a map documenting the exact moments a massive mission begins to fail.
Exactly. So that is our entire mission for you today. We are taking a deep dive into the biblical book of Judges,
Yep.
specifically chapter 1.
And we're pulling heavily from the historical and theological notes of two really great sources, the Holman and the NAA study Bibles.
Yeah, and the goal here is to uncover how the seeds of apostasy, the roots of total societal failure, are planted through these subtle, seemingly justifiable compromises.
Because it's never just one big disastrous decision, is it?
No, it's 1,000 tiny cuts. So let's set the stage. The book opens right after the death of Joshua.
Right, so there is a massive leadership vacuum.
Huge. The Israelites are looking for direction. They're asking God, who should go first to fight the Canaanites and actually claim this promised land?
And God says the tribe of Judah should lead.
Right. So Judah teams up with the tribe of Simeon, and they attack a place called Besek. And they defeat 10,000 men.
Which on paper, that is a spectacular opening move.
It really is. It's the kind of victory that makes it into the history books. It's just, well, an unmitigated success.
Defeating 10,000 entrenched enemies in ancient warfare. That is no small feat. I mean, it establishes immediate dominance.
Dominance is definitely the word, especially when you look at what happens next, because the narrative gets incredibly visceral here.
It does. It gets very dark.
They capture the leader of the Canaanite forces, this guy named Adoni-Bezek, which translates to the Lord of Besek.
Right. But
And when the Israelites catch him, they don't just execute him, they actually cut off his thumbs and his big toes.
which sounds completely wild to us today.
Right. And Adoni-Bezek actually acknowledges this as a sort of like a dark karma.
Yeah, he admits he had done the exact same thing to 70 other kings.
70. And he says those kings then had to gather scraps under his table. So he literally says, as I have done, so God has repaid me.
It's striking.
It is. Reading it today, it feels like this perfectly balanced, cinematic justice. The cruel tyrant gets exactly what he gave out.
Well, the human impulse is definitely to cheer for that kind of poetic justice, but when you look at the historical context in the Holman study notes, they completely reframe this moment.
How so?
Well, instead of a righteous victory, this mutilation is actually the first major red flag in the narrative.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit. Because taking out the enemy king and, humiliating him, that seems like standard ancient warfare playbook.
It is.
It's brutal, sure, but it's effective.
But standard ancient warfare is precisely the problem here.
Oh, I see.
The Holman study notes point out that cutting off thumbs and big toes, that was a very common pagan practice in ancient Mesopotamian Greece.
Wow.
Think about the physical mechanics of this. Without thumbs, a warrior can never hold a sword or draw a bow again.
Right.
And without big toes, they lose their equilibrium. They cannot stand their ground in a shield wall. They certainly can't run.
It's the ancient equivalent of permanently disabling enemy artillery, just, applied to a human body.
Exactly. It is a highly pragmatic, deeply cruel way to permanently neutralize a threat without having to feed and house able-bodied prisoners.
But Israel wasn't supposed to be doing that.
No. Israel was specifically called not to adopt the pragmatic, cruel strategies of the surrounding nations.
Right, because of the divine commands.
Yes, the commands given in Deuteronomy, which the notes heavily reference. They were instructed to completely execute the Canaanite leaders, effectively removing that corrupting influence from the land.
So it wasn't supposed to be about torture.
Not at all. Nor was it meant to establish a dominant hierarchy where maimed kings beg for scraps under an Israelite table.
Oh, wow. So by adopting the strategy of Adoni-Bezek, the Israelites are perfectly mirroring the very people they're supposed to be driving out.
Precisely.
It's that classic trope,
Yeah,
staring into the abyss and becoming the monster you're trying to defeat.
that's a great way to put it.
They look at this pagan king and think, hey, that thumb-cutting tactic, that works. Let's incorporate that.
Right.
And in doing so, they are already losing their distinct identity. They're supposed to be a holy people set apart, and on day one, page one, they are copy-pasting the enemy's playbook.
And this brings up one of the major themes the NAA notes highlight about why Israel ultimately failed.
Which is?
Their own sin and moral compromise. This wasn't just a tactical error, it was a moral failure that began to separate them from the divine protection they previously enjoyed.
Deciding that how you do something doesn't matter as long as you win, that sets a really dangerous precedent.
It creates a foundational rot. The physical battle was won, but they failed the spiritual test. And the text immediately juxtaposes this subtle moral compromise with an incredible contrast in faith.
Right, the narrative pivots here. It moves from the broader armies of Judah down to a specific family, the family of Caleb.
Caleb is such a fascinating figure in this text.
He really is. He was one of the original spies with Joshua. He's an older guy now, but still fierce.
Still ready to fight.
Exactly. And he offers his daughter, Asa, in marriage to whoever can conquer this heavily fortified city called Dibir. It used to be called Kiryat Sefer.
Right.
So his nephew, Othniel, steps up, wins the battle, and gets to marry Asa. But the battle itself is almost a footnote compared to what Asa does afterward.
She truly is a remarkable proactive figure in a text that, let's be honest, often sidelines women.
Yeah, she goes to her father, Caleb.
Yeah.
And she doesn't just passively accept her dowry. She's given land in the Negev.
And we should probably give some geographical context there.
Yeah, definitely. So the Negev is essentially this harsh, parched desert region in the south.
Very dry.
Extremely dry. Without a reliable water source, giving someone land in the Negev is just giving them acres of hot dirt.
Right.
So she boldly asks her father for a blessing. She says, "Since you have given me the land of the Negev, give me also springs of water."
And Caleb's response is amazing.
He doesn't just give her a well. He gives her both the upper springs and the lower springs.
The study notes emphasize this as a profound picture of absolute faith. Aksha understands the generous nature of her father, and she understands what is actually required to sustain life.
She knows the dirt isn't enough.
Exactly. She recognizes that dry land isn't enough to flourish, so she claims the fullness of the promise. She asks for the impossible water in a desert, and she receives abundantly.
It's deeply relational.
It is a faith-filled moment where she demands the resources necessary to thrive.
It is a beautiful picture of taking hold of a promise. But then literally in the next breath, the text zooms back out to the broader tribe of Judah, and everything falls apart.
The contrast is jarring.
It really is.
Yeah.
They successfully conquer the mountains, but they
Yeah.
totally failed to drive out the inhabitants of the valley. And the reason given,
Iron chariots.
yes, because the Canaanites in the valley had iron chariots.
Yeah.
Now, I have to act on behalf of the listener here and challenge the text a bit.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so if you are an ancient foot soldier, armed with bronze or maybe early iron weapons, and you are facing cutting-edge military technology, like a fleet of iron chariots in a flat valley,
Yeah.
retreating seems like basic common sense.
From a purely tactical standpoint, absolutely.
Right, it's not a spiritual failure to say, hey, foot soldiers against armored tanks isn't going to work today, let's regroup.
Mm.
How do the study Bibles justify calling this tactical retreat a failure?
Well, sending infantry into a valley against heavy chariots is a suicide mission. Your logic is sound if this were just a secular military history. But you have to view this through the lens of the narrative's internal history. The sources, both the Holman and NABO notes, point out that this is another core reason for their ultimate failure. The fear of enemy armaments blinded them to spiritual realities.
Meaning they forgot their own history.
Precisely. God had already demonstrated that human technology was completely irrelevant to his promises.
Oh, like the Red Sea.
Yes. The notes remind us that during the time of Moses, God parted an entire sea to destroy the elite, state-of-the-art chariots of Egypt.
Wow, right.
But here, the Israelites allow themselves to be intimidated by the material reality of iron. They falsely assume that iron chariots are somehow outside of the Lord's jurisdiction or power to overcome.
They looked at the iron and thought, well, God is great against bronze and he's fantastic against wood, but iron is where the magic stops.
Exactly.
They put a hard limit on what the divine could accomplish based entirely on the latest human technology.
The contrast the author is making is intentional and stark. If Caleb's daughter Aksa represents the faith that asks for the impossible in the desert.
Right. Then the army of Judah represents the fear that retreats from the possible in the valley. Judah succeeds in the mountains, where chariots are practically useless.
Oh. That means they only relied on God when the tactical advantage was already theirs.
Exactly. When the odds shifted and required actual faith, that faith evaporated.
Wow.
Furthermore, the NWA notes suggest God used these difficult situations, like the presence of iron chariots, to test their fidelity.
And they failed the test the moment it became intimidating.
They did.
That is a profound insight into human nature. We trust the process when it's easy or when it makes logical sense to our own minds. But when the terrain changes and the enemy rolls out the heavy armor, we abandon the mission.
It happens so quickly.
It does. So if fear of technology stopped Judah in the valleys, what stopped the other tribes? Because as you read further into chapter 1, you realize the rest of the tribes, Manasseh, Ephraim, Zebulun, Asher, Naphtali, they were actually stronger than the Canaanites.
They were. They had the upper hand.
So why didn't they succeed? This is where the narrative shifts from tragic fear to a trap that is far more insidious. Economic convenience.
Yeah, the list of failures just cascades down the page. Over and over, you read this depressing refrain. They did not drive out the Canaanites.
But the text adds a crucial detail.
Right. It says that when Israel became strong, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor. They made them tributaries.
The NWA study notes are very sharp on this point. This wasn't a matter of inability, it was a matter of comfort.
Comfort.
The Israelites were apparently satisfied with a booming economy, productive land, and a suddenly available, subjugated workforce.
So they lacked the zeal to accomplish God's full purpose of clearing the land.
Exactly. They traded their core calling for comfort.
They looked at the Canaanites and thought, why go through the hard, dangerous work of driving them out when we can just tax them?
Right. Why destroy an enemy when you can put them on the payroll?
Have them build your houses, increase your profit margins. But let's dig into how this actually destroys them. Because on paper, having your enemy build your roads sounds like a win.
It feels like a massive political and economic win, which is why it's such a seductive trap. But the mechanism of failure here is assimilation by proxy.
Assimilation by proxy. I like that.
When you put a conquered people on your payroll and weave them into your supply chain, you aren't just getting their labor. You are importing their culture, their daily habits, their intermarriage practices, and ultimately their gods right into the center of your daily economy.
It's like deciding to keep a known termite colony in your basement because you want to harvest them for fish bait.
That's a vivid image.
Right, completely ignoring the fact that while you're getting a little bit of free bait, they are slowly, methodically eating the foundation of your house.
That is a highly accurate mechanical metaphor for the rest of the book of Judges. This willingness to make alliances and coexist for economic gain is another primary reason listed for their downfall.
It's just easier in the moment.
Yes. By keeping the Canaanites around for convenience, they ensured that the idolatrous culture of Canaan would remain permanently woven into the fabric of Israelite society.
Speaking of doing things for convenience, we have to talk about the Bethel spy. Because this story borders on the absurd.
It really does.
So the house of Joseph goes up to attack the city of Bethel, which used to be called Luz.
Right.
They are staking out the heavily fortified city, looking for a way in, and they catch a guy sneaking out.
Just a random guy.
Yeah, and they tell him, show us the secret entrance to the city, and we'll show you mercy. So the guy points out the weak spot. The Israelites go in, conquer the city, and spare the man and his family.
Now, this closely echoes the famous story of Rahab in Jericho from the book of Joshua, where a local helps the invading Israelites.
It does echo it, until you see the aftermath. Because the text says, this man, after being spared, packs up his family, journeys to the land of the Hittites, which is a completely different region, and literally just builds a brand new city and calls it Luz.
Right.
Doesn't this defeat the entire purpose of the conquest? They spare a guy who immediately goes one town over, builds a carbon copy of the Canaanite city, and even keeps the same name.
He didn't change at all.
He literally just copy-pasted the problem. It's the ancient equivalent of sweeping dust under a rug, only to find the dust built its own house and named it Dustville.
The absurdity is the point. And the study notes highlight the contrast beautifully by bringing Rahab back into the picture.
Okay, how so?
When Rahab helped the Israelites in Jericho, she recognized the God of Israel. She and her family assimilated into the Israelite community, leaving her old Canaanite life behind to join their faith.
Right, she integrated. She actually changed.
Yes. But this unnamed man from Bethel, he shows absolutely no interest in Israel or their God. It was a purely transactional arrangement to save his own skin.
This business.
Exactly. And the moment he is free, he uses the mercy he was granted to perpetuate the exact same Canaanite culture, even preserving the legacy of the city name, Luz, in a new location.
So the Israelites didn't actually eliminate the Canaanite influence, they just relocated it.
Exit.
They solved their immediate tactical problem of getting inside the walls of Bethel, but they contributed to the long-term failure of their mission by letting the culture survive and spread elsewhere. It's compromise masquerading as mercy.
And that accumulation of compromise leads us to the final, most devastating example in the chapter.
It just keeps getting worse.
It does. We've seen compromise through cruelty with Adoni-Bezek. We've seen the fear of technology with the iron chariots. We've seen greed and convenience with the forced labor.
Right.
Now we look at what happens when these seeds of apostasy fully bloom and mature into total societal failure.
The total reversal. The tribe of Dan.
The worst situation in the entire chapter belongs to the children of Dan.
It really is pathetic to read. The text says the Amorites, who are this fierce, deeply entrenched group in the highlands and valleys, they didn't just resist the Danites, they actively turned the tables.
He pushed them out.
Yeah, they forced the tribe of Dan up into the mountainous regions and completely blocked them from coming down into the fertile valley.
The notes observe a painful, tragic irony here. The inhabitants of the land were far more determined to stay than Israel was to obey God.
Wow.
The Amorites simply refused to yield their ground, and the Danites, worn down by a generation of compromise, fear, and economic rationalization, just gave up the territory.
They were supposed to be the divine conquerors, sweeping through the land to establish a new nation. Instead, they end up being corralled into the rocky hills like refugees in their own promised land.
To really understand the depth of this spiritual and physical failure, the Holman notes provide a brilliant word study. They focus on the Hebrew word lakum.
Lakum. What is the significance of that word?
It means to fight, to wage war, to do battle. It appears 31 times in the book of Judges. It is the defining verb of the era. The entire opening chapter is centered around the divine mandate to lakum, to fight for the purity and the promise of the land that was given to them.
So the mandate is active. You can't just inherit it, you have to fight for it.
You have to fight. But the tragedy of chapter 1 is that the Israelites systematically stopped doing it.
They just give up.
They stopped fighting the enemy and start accommodating them. They stop waging war against the idolatry and start making treaties with it. The word lakum hangs over the text as an indictment of what they were supposed to be doing, contrasted with the endless compromises they actually made.
They just lost the will to lakum. They lost the will to fight for what actually mattered, opting for whatever was easiest in the moment.
Exactly.
And I know the NAA Study Bible has this really helpful table that sort of summarizes all these failures we've been talking about, right?
Yes. It outlines 5 core reasons for their failure. First, as we discussed, the fear of enemy armaments and fortifications, the iron chariots.
Check.
Second, a willingness to make alliances for convenience and economy.
The forced labor trap.
Third, Israel's own sin and need for punishment stepping outside the bounds of their calling.
Like the thumb cutting.
Right. Fourth, God using the situation to test their fidelity, a test they often failed. And finally, because they retreated to the mountains and chose comfort over conquest, it created a dire necessity for the new generation to be instructed in the art of war.
Because the fathers failed to complete the task,
Yeah.
the children would have to learn the hard way how to lakum.
Yes. The consequences of compromise are rarely contained to just one generation. They pass the battle on to their kids against cultures they had allowed to fester and grow strong.
It is incredibly heavy when you step back and view the whole picture.
It is.
When you put all these pieces together, Judges chapter 1 isn't just a dusty list of ancient battles and weird names. It is a profound, incredibly relevant warning about human nature.
Absolutely.
It shows us that total failure rarely happens overnight. You don't just wake up one day and abandon everything you believe in or care about. It happens through 1,000 small, easily justifiable compromises.
It's the slow fade. The psychology of it is timeless. The text demands that we look at our own justifications. Where are we accepting partial obedience and calling it success? Where are we accommodating the very things we were meant to overcome?
Exactly. It's saying, oh, I'll adopt my enemy's toxic tactics just this once to get ahead.
Yeah.
Or it's looking at a new, intimidating technology and deciding that your mission is impossible before you even try.
Right.
It's choosing the comfort of a steady paycheck or a quiet life over the difficult, friction-filled zeal of your core calling. And before you know it, you are trapped in the mountains, blocked from the valley, wondering where it all went wrong.
It's a sobering thought.
Which brings us to the final thought we want to leave you with today. We spent this time looking at the ancient Israelites, but now I want you to think about your own life, your own big goals, or your own core missions. Think about the landscape you are trying to navigate right now. What are the iron chariots in your world?
That is the essential question to take away from this text.
What are those obstacles that look so technologically, practically, or financially intimidating that they're causing you to slowly, quietly abandon your core mission? What is making you retreat to the mountains when you are fully equipped and called to take the valley?
A great challenge.
Don't let the fear of the chariot blind you to the reality of the promise. Just something for you to mull over as you go about your week.
Thank you so much for joining us in this deep dive.
Yes, thank you for being here with us. We appreciate you. And remember, God blesses all the listeners. We will see you on the next Deep Dive.